Chapter 3. Justice. The Stoic perspective on justice aligns closely with the conventional view, but it places additional emphasis in certain areas. By applying the dichotomy of control to the concept of justice, Stoicism leads us to some different conclusions about the right way to act. Also, the Stoics believe that humans are inherently social beings, born to coexist and cooperate, infusing their understanding of justice with a deeper recognition of our interconnectedness. This perspective shapes a more community-oriented approach to justice, acknowledging our collective responsibility and mutual dependence. If it isn't right, don't do it. If it isn't true, don't say it. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor and a Stoic. It seems like a strange combination, but he did go down as one of the 5 good emperors, which is a pretty strong endorsement of the philosophy. His personal writings, compiled in meditations, offer profound insights, though they were originally intended only for his own reflection. A notable quote from these writings is,
"If it be not fitting, do it not. If it be not true, speak it not,"
which is often paraphrased online as, "If it isn't right, don't do it. If it isn't true, don't say it." This perfectly captures this core Stoic tenet. Always act justly and speak truthfully, regardless of the consequences. Stoicism teaches that the moral integrity of our actions and words is paramount, and any repercussions for adhering to virtue are preferable to the loss of that integrity. Historically, Stoics have demonstrated their commitment to this principle, often facing exile, torture, or even death. Seneca himself, when condemned to death by Emperor Nero, calmly took his own life rather than compromise his honor in the face of torture. The rationale behind such extreme adherence to virtue is the belief that tranquility of mind, the highest good in Stoicism, is achieved through virtue and lost through its compromise. A clear conscience, essential for inner peace, is only possible through righteous actions and truthful speech. The gravity of the situation and the severity of potential consequences only heighten the importance of maintaining virtue, as a single significant moral lapse can burden one's conscience for a lifetime. It is also worth mentioning that Stoicism offers a clear perspective on collective action dilemmas, which often perplex those without a philosophy of life. This includes challenges like the tragedy of the commons or the subtle negative impact of observing others' minor unethical behaviors. Stoicism argues that the right action is not contingent on others' actions or a cost-benefit analysis, but on one's conscience. While others may debate the impact of their individual actions on the larger picture, a Stoic focuses on acting with virtue and just does what is right. Interconnectivity.
There is no such thing as good or bad fortune for the individual. We live in common, and no one can live happily who has regard to himself alone and transforms everything into a question of his own utility. You must live for your neighbor if you would live for yourself.
The Stoics believed in the interconnectivity of all of humanity, that we are born to be intermixed with our fellow man and to be of service to one another. Treating anyone like a stranger is to be in improper association with them. Our shared human traits, particularly our capacity for reason, essentially make strangers more akin to distant cousins. Hierocles, a Greek Stoic philosopher from around 200 BCE, is credited with introducing the concept of oikeiosis. This idea visualizes our relationships in the world as a series of concentric circles, beginning with the self at the center and expanding outward to include family, community members, countrymen, and ultimately all of humanity. When we apply wisdom to justice, we are compelled to draw these circles closer together, treating family members as extensions of ourselves, friends as family, and strangers as friends. While it may not be expressed outwardly, internally acknowledging everyone as family, brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, aunts, not only improves the way we treat people, but also transforms our experience of the world. It shifts our perspective from one primarily defined by alienation to one primarily defined by integration. This mental shift is a powerful tool to counteract the underlying anxiety that often accompanies living in a complex society among strangers, which can block the path to a tranquil mind. While saying this, the Stoics were not unaware of the level of wickedness common to their fellow humans and themselves, or the difficulty of the task. In terms reminiscent of the present day, Seneca explains both sides of the struggle.
The wise man will never cease to be angry if he once begins, so full is every place of vices and crimes. More evil is done than can be healed by punishment. Men seem engaged in a vast race of wickedness. Every day there is greater eagerness to sin, less modesty, throwing aside all reverence for what is better and more just. Lust rushes whithersoever it thinks fit, and crimes are no longer committed by stealth. They take place before our eyes, and wickedness has become so general and gained such a footing in everyone's breast that innocence is no longer rare, but no longer exists. Do men break the law singly or a few at a time? Nay, they rise in all quarters at once as though obeying some universal signal to wipe out the boundaries of right and wrong. Host is not safe from guest, father-in-law from son, but seldom love exists twixt brothers. Wives long to destroy their husbands. Husbands long to slay their wives. Stepmothers deadly aconite prepare, and child heirs wonder when their sires will die. And how small a part of men's crimes are these? The poet has not described one people divided into two hostile camps, parents and children enrolled on opposite sides, Rome set on fire by the hand of a Roman, troops of fierce horsemen scouring the country to track out the hiding places of the proscribed, wells defiled with poison, plagues created by human hands, trenches dug by children round their beleaguered parents, crowded prisons, conflagrations that consume whole cities, gloomy tyrannies, secret plots to establish despotisms and ruin peoples, and men glorying in those deeds which, as long as it was possible to repress them, were counted as crimes. I mean rape, debauchery, and lust. Add to these public acts of national bad faith, broken treaties, everything that cannot defend itself carried off as plunder by the stronger, knaveries, thefts, frauds, and disownings of debt such as 3 of our present law courts would not suffice to deal with. If you want the wise man to be as angry as the atrocity of men's crimes requires, he must not merely be angry, but must go mad with rage. You will rather think that we should not be angry with people's faults. For what shall we say of one who is angry with those who stumble in the dark, or with deaf people who cannot hear his orders, or with children because they forget their duty and interest themselves in the games and silly jokes of their companions? What shall we say if you choose to be angry with weaklings for being sick, for growing old, or becoming fatigued? Among the other misfortunes of humanity is this, that men's intellects are confused, and they not only cannot help going wrong, but love to go wrong. To avoid being angry with individuals, you must pardon the whole mass. You must grant forgiveness to the entire human race. If you are angry with young and old men because they do wrong, you will be angry with infants also, for they soon will do wrong. Does anyone become angry with children who are too young to comprehend distinctions? Yet to be a human being is a greater and a better excuse than to be a child. Thus are we born, as creatures liable to as many disorders of the mind as of the body, not dull and slow-witted, but making a bad use of our keenness of wit, and leading one another into vice by our example. He who follows others who have started before him on the wrong road is surely excusable for having wandered on the highway. A general severity may be shown in the case of individual deserters, but where a whole army deserts, it must needs be pardoned. What is it that puts a stop to the wise man's anger? It is the number of sinners. He perceives how unjust and how dangerous it is to be angry with vices which all men share. Heraclitus, whenever he came out of doors and beheld around him such a number of men who were living wretchedly, nay, rather perishing wretchedly, used to weep. He pitied all those who met him joyous and happy. He was of a gentle but too weak disposition, and he himself was one of those for whom he ought to have wept. Democritus, on the other hand, is said never to have appeared in public without laughing. So little did men's serious occupations appear serious to him. What room is there for anger? Everything ought either to move us to tears or to laughter. The wise man will not be angry with sinners. Why not? Because he knows that no one is born wise but becomes so. He knows that very few wise men are produced in any age, because he thoroughly understands the circumstances of human life. Now, no sane man is angry with nature, for what should we say if a man chose to be surprised that fruit did not hang on the thickets of a forest, or to wonder at bushes and thorns not being covered with some useful berry? No one is angry when nature excuses a defect. The wise man, therefore, being tranquil and dealing candidly with mistakes, not an enemy to, but an improver of sinners, will go abroad every day in the following frame of mind. Many men will meet me, who are drunkards, lustful, ungrateful, greedy, and excited by the frenzy of ambition. He will view all these as benignly as a physician does his patients.
Marcus Aurelius also expressed this idea beautifully in Meditations.
When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood and birth, but the same mind and possessing a share of the divine. And so none of them can hurt me. No one can implicate me in ugliness, nor can I feel angry at my relative or hate him. We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower. To obstruct each other is unnatural. To feel anger at someone, to turn your back on him, these are unnatural.
Acknowledge that people are pretty awful. Realize that we have all done so much wrong that there is no way to sort it all out, and a universal pardon is the only practical answer. Remember that it is unfair and unproductive to be angry with individuals for doing what everyone else is also doing. Remember that we are born to work together with others, even those who are difficult and troublesome. Aspire to treat your fellow humans like a doctor treats their patients, providing whatever assistance you can and not reacting to or condemning their flaws. This is how the Stoic puts interconnectivity into practice. How does a Stoic do good in the world? A frequent concern non-Stoics raise about the philosophy is around the issue of passivity. Sure, virtue and tranquility of mind sound good, but not if one has to resign from the world and the events of the day. This misunderstanding comes from the colloquial usage of Stoicism, only referring to the part about controlling one's emotions. When it comes to justice and Stoicism, people ought to think of Cato the Younger, the last man standing up for the Roman Republic against Julius Caesar, or George Washington during the American Revolution. Luckily, none of us will have to go that far, but Seneca continues his passage above with a prescription of how we should act.
When a man's ship leaks freely through its opened seams, does he become angry with the sailors or the ship itself? No. Instead of that, he tries to remedy it. He shuts out some water, bails out some other, closes all the holes that he can see, and by ceaseless labour counteracts those which are out of sight and which let water into the hold. Nor does he relax his efforts, because as much water as he pumps out runs in again. We need a long-breathed struggle against permanent and prolific evils, not indeed to quell them, but merely to prevent their overpowering us.
That is the answer to how a Stoic does good in the world. Do we sail on calm seas in a well-made boat? Even someone robbed of their senses knows the answer is no from the tossing of the boat and the wetness of his feet. We live in an age of ever-multiplying vices where virtue itself is mocked. The good person, therefore, busies themselves with bailing water and fixing whatever holes they can reach, while the rest curse each other, or the boat, or the crew, or the gods themselves. Some style themselves as captains and imagine themselves in control of the whole situation. Some others beckon the water and go so far as to make new holes to let it in. None of this is unexpected to the good person who keeps up their work diligently with the knowledge that they will need to continue for the duration of the journey. Stoic practice. Can I be like that too? In our previous practices, we explored techniques to hone your ability to focus and be aware of your thoughts in real time. This skill is crucial for our next practice, which aims to enhance your relationships with others. This practice centers on developing the ability to immediately notice when you start judging someone. The moment you catch yourself in this act, the goal is to pivot your thoughts towards something more virtuous, and to remind yourself of your shared humanity with the person you are judging. Once you notice, pose the question to yourself, can I be like that too? If your answer is yes, which is likely, it becomes easy to let go of the judgment and instead have sympathy for your fellow infirmed. My cousin and I have a hard time controlling our tempers. I am grateful mine is not assaulting me at the moment. If your answer is no, then it becomes easier to change judgment into sympathy, as well as to be grateful for whatever it is that has spared you from this particular fault of character. Implementing this practice consistently requires effort, but it is a powerful way to become a kinder, more content individual. It also serves as an effective method to superstitiously worship virtue. You will know you are progressing towards a state of tranquility when your view of others shifts from seeing them as mostly annoying to recognizing them as family who can be challenging at times.